Anderson Cooper didn't hold back, and Meghan Markle definitely didn't expect this. Their clash on CNN this morning turned into one of the most shocking on-air moments of the year. If you want the uncensored breakdown with zero sugarcoating, stick around and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next explosive media showdown. The studio lights were bright, casting a crisp glow across the CNN set. Anderson Cooper sat forward in his chair, eyes focused on Meghan Markle, waiting for her to respond. She had just made a statement that would catch anyone off guard. For a moment, the air seemed to pause, as if the room itself was holding its breath. The camera cut from Anderson to Meghan, capturing the brief flash of surprise and hesitation on her face. This was not the usual celebrity interview. This was a clash that promised tension, controversy, and a level of accountability most viewers had not seen before. The audience at home could feel it instantly. Anderson Cooper reacted with calm precision, his expression unreadable, but the subtle narrowing of his eyes spoke volumes. The conversation had already shifted. What started as a morning show debate had become a test of composure and credibility. Meghan was clearly aware that this would be different from other interviews she had done. The questions were sharper, the scrutiny more intense, and every word carried weight. Viewers immediately sensed that something significant was unfolding. The social media chatter would explode once this moment aired. CNN clash, Meghan Markle controversy, heated interview, and Anderson Cooper reacts would all trend as fans and critics debated the exchange. Both sides were on edge. Neither expected how the conversation would unfold. The tension was tangible, the stakes high, and the fallout from this clash would be discussed for days. This was just the beginning, and the viewers knew they were witnessing something extraordinary. The tension in the studio did not come out of nowhere. This interview had been months in the making, with both Anderson Cooper and Meghan Markle aware that it would be scrutinized by millions around the world. Anderson Cooper had built his reputation over decades as a journalist who does not shy away from difficult questions. He had covered wars, political scandals, and high-profile investigations, and he had earned the trust of viewers for his calm and precise style. Meghan Markle had also spent years in the public eye, first as an actress, then as a member of the royal family. She had faced intense media attention, praise, and criticism, and she had become known for sharing her personal experiences in a way that sparked global conversation. Each of them brought a clear agenda into the room. Cooper was there to hold her accountable and press for clarity, while Meghan came prepared to tell her version of events and defend her choices. Public narratives had already shaped the expectations for this interview. Some viewers expected a sympathetic platform for Meghan to expand on previous claims. Others expected a hard-hitting confrontation that would challenge her story. Social media buzz, tabloid coverage, and previous interviews had all built anticipation for this moment. Everyone watching knew that nothing in this interview would be simple or routine. Both participants were experienced and calculated, but the clash between a seasoned journalist and a figure who had captured global attention promised sparks. The stakes were high, and the audience sensed that the conversation would not only reveal new details but also redefine public perception. This was more than a morning show debate. It was a collision of reputations, strategy, and scrutiny that no one could ignore. Before we dive deeper, make sure you hit that subscribe button. This channel does not sugarcoat anything, and the next chapters are even more intense. Meghan Markle leaned forward slightly in her chair, her hands clasped in front of her. Her voice was calm, but there was a determination behind it that immediately drew attention. She began by recounting experiences that had shaped her time in the royal family, speaking about the challenges she had faced and the pressures that had been placed upon her. She described moments of isolation, feelings of being unheard, and the struggles with maintaining her own mental health in an environment that often seemed rigid and unforgiving. Every word was measured, her tone confident yet carefully controlled. The audience could sense that she was prepared to make a statement that would set the tone for the entire interview. Social media had already started reacting as clips of her opening remarks were shared in real time, with viewers debating the claims and speculating on how Anderson Cooper would respond. The energy in the studio shifted. Cooper listened quietly at first, his expression neutral, but there was a sharp focus in his eyes. He had heard the claim, and he knew that this was the moment to begin asking pointed questions. The conversation began to build tension as Cooper interjected, not with anger but with a precise and calculated calm that immediately signaled he would not allow any statements to go unchallenged. Meghan adjusted slightly, aware that the first pushback had arrived. The rhythm of the interview began to change. Every assertion she made was met with subtle, probing questions that forced her to elaborate and defend her position. The audience, both in the studio and online, felt the intensity building. Tweets and comments began popping up almost instantly, reacting to the opening exchange. Some viewers praised her courage, while others questioned the timing and validity of her claims. The contrast between Meghan's composed delivery and Cooper's steady scrutiny created a palpable tension that carried the weight of anticipation. By the time she had finished her initial statements, it was clear that this would not be a routine conversation. Both participants had entered the room with their agendas, and the spark had been lit. The interview was now set to escalate, and the world was watching to see how each would respond to the unfolding confrontation. Anderson Cooper leaned forward slightly, his gaze steady and unwavering. He spoke calmly, but there was a precision in his tone that immediately signaled this would not be a soft exchange. He began asking pointed questions, pressing Meghan on details of her claims without any hint of judgment. Each question was clear, direct, and backed by context that the audience could follow. He highlighted facts, timelines, and public records, framing his inquiries in a way that left little room for vague responses. Meghan shifted slightly in her chair, her composed exterior starting to show the first cracks. She answered with measured words, but there was a noticeable tension in her voice as she tried to navigate the line between defending her story and maintaining control of the narrative. The energy in the studio changed. What had started as a confident opening from Meghan had become a more dynamic exchange, with Anderson controlling the rhythm and steering the conversation toward clarity and accountability. Viewers at home quickly picked up on the shift. Social media reacted almost instantly, with some praising Cooper for his sharp questioning and others defending Meghan's perspective. The comments were divided, creating a real-time debate about fairness, privilege, and media scrutiny. Cooper continued, methodically unpacking each statement, asking for specifics that would either confirm or challenge the narrative Meghan had presented. He did not raise his voice or show aggression, but the force of his logic and the weight of his questions made the tension in the room tangible. Meghan's posture became slightly defensive as she searched for phrasing that could satisfy both the question and her own messaging. Every word mattered, and both the studio audience and viewers online could feel the stakes rising. The clash was no longer about simple storytelling, it was about accountability, perception, and the collision of public personas. The first pushback had shifted the tone entirely, signaling that this interview would be remembered not for comfort or repetition, but for confrontation and clarity. Anderson Cooper had taken control, and Meghan Markle was now being tested under a level of scrutiny she had not fully experienced before. The conversation quickly intensified as Anderson Cooper began pressing harder on specific claims Meghan had made. His voice remained calm, but each question was sharper, more precise, and left little room for evasive answers. He highlighted inconsistencies in her statements, pointing to public records, interviews, and timelines that contradicted certain parts of her narrative. Meghan's composure began to show strain. Her hands moved slightly more as she gestured for emphasis, and she leaned back occasionally as if trying to create space between herself and the scrutiny. She answered defensively at times, repeating phrases she had rehearsed, but the sharpness of Cooper's questioning made those phrases seem less convincing. The tension in the studio was almost palpable. Both participants spoke over each other occasionally, interruptions punctuating the rhythm of the exchange. Anderson did not raise his voice, but his controlled insistence created a pressure that was impossible to ignore. Meghan's responses became more pointed, her tone rising as she tried to assert her perspective while maintaining her dignity. The audience could sense the emotional stakes rising. Viewers at home and online were reacting in real time, with social media buzzing about every exchange. Some saw Cooper as holding Meghan accountable, while others believed she was being unfairly challenged. The emotional rhythm of the conversation created a push and pull between accusation and defense. Cooper continued to dissect each claim methodically, demanding clarity without allowing her to retreat into generalities. Meghan's posture and tone made it clear that she was feeling the pressure, trying to balance honesty with protecting her image. Every back and forth added layers to the story, showing viewers not only the content of the discussion but the underlying tension between truth, perception, and accountability. By the end of this segment, it was obvious that the interview had moved far beyond a typical conversation. It had become a combative, high-stakes dialogue where both participants were fully engaged, emotions were high, and the audience was hooked on every word. Anderson Cooper leaned in slightly, his tone calm but unyielding. He delivered the line that would instantly grab attention. "You had every advantage, Meghan. You knew the expectations, the scrutiny, and the rules, and yet you are painting yourself as the victim of circumstances you chose." The words hung in the air and for a moment the studio seemed to freeze. Meghan paused, her hands tightening slightly in her lap, and her eyes reflected the shock of hearing such a direct challenge. The production crew, analysts, and even remote guests were visibly caught off guard. Cameras captured the subtle changes in her expression, a slight falter in her confident smile, a brief glance away, and a deepening of the tension in her shoulders. Social media instantly erupted. Clips of the line began trending, with viewers debating its fairness and impact. Some called it a moment of journalistic mastery, while others defended Meghan's perspective, claiming the line was too harsh. The silence from Meghan was telling. For several seconds, she seemed to process the weight of the words, searching for a response that could reclaim control of the conversation. The audience, both in the studio and at home, could feel the shift in momentum. What had been a tense dialogue now carried a new intensity. Cooper's calm delivery made the line even more impactful, highlighting the contrast between precise questioning and emotional vulnerability. The shock factor was undeniable, yet it was presented without exaggeration or theatrics. Viewers could sense the gravity of the moment as it unfolded naturally, with all eyes on Meghan and the immediate reactions around her. This was the point where the narrative balance had clearly shifted, and everyone watching knew they had just witnessed a line that would be discussed and replayed for days to come. Meghan took a deep breath and attempted to pivot, shifting the focus from criticism to personal experience. She spoke about the emotional toll of living under constant scrutiny, the pressure to maintain perfection in public, and the struggles of balancing family responsibilities with the expectations of a world watching every move. Her words were measured, and she tried to frame the narrative in a way that emphasized resilience and empathy. She painted herself as someone navigating impossible circumstances while trying to protect her family and maintain her own sense of self. Anderson Cooper, however, remained composed. He listened intently, his expression neutral, and did not give any indication that her reframing had altered the momentum. He asked clarifying questions that gently but firmly returned to the inconsistencies and gaps in her previous statements. Meghan attempted to interject with examples and personal anecdotes, hoping to humanize her experience and regain the narrative upper hand. She spoke about threats, media intrusion, and the challenges of leaving behind a familiar life for something entirely new. The intention was clear, to evoke sympathy and re-establish control. Yet the impact on the audience was limited. While her perspective was genuine, the timing and context of her remarks made it difficult for viewers to fully connect. Many had already absorbed the weight of Cooper's precise questioning, and her attempts to redirect the story felt reactive rather than proactive. Social media reflected this split. Some viewers expressed understanding, empathizing with the personal challenges she described, but a larger portion noted that the counterattack lacked evidence and did not address the direct points raised. The tone of the segment shifted slightly, but the overall power dynamic remained in Anderson's favor. His calm insistence, combined with methodical follow-up, kept the pressure on Meghan, making her counterattack seem less like a reclaiming of control and more like a defensive maneuver. The audience could sense the tension between vulnerability and accountability, and the narrative that had been built earlier continued to dominate. By the end of her attempt, it was evident that while she had tried to regain influence over the conversation, the momentum had firmly shifted, and Anderson Cooper remained in command after the intense back and forth between Anderson Cooper and Meghan Markle. The camera panned to the expert panel seated across from the studio. Analysts leaned forward, some nodding in agreement with Cooper's line of questioning, while others glanced at notes, preparing to defend Meghan's perspective. One media analyst noted that Cooper had showcased the essence of accountability journalism, emphasizing that public figures cannot expect to make explosive claims without facing scrutiny. They highlighted how he methodically deconstructed inconsistencies, turning the conversation into a lesson on media responsibility. On the other hand, another analyst argued that the questions had crossed a line, suggesting that the tone bordered on personal attack rather than purely factual inquiry. They emphasized that Meghan's experiences were valid and that the relentless focus on contradictions risked overshadowing the genuine challenges she had faced. The split opinions created a tangible tension on set. Viewers at home could sense the debate, and social media buzz reflected the division, with hashtags trending on both sides of the discussion. The panel dissected specific moments, replaying short clips of Cooper's calm but piercing questions and Meghan's defensive responses. Some praised her attempt to reclaim control, while others argued it had fallen flat under the weight of pointed journalism. The contrasting perspectives gave the segment an added layer of drama, intensifying the feud narrative. It was no longer just an interview between two individuals, It had evolved into a larger conversation about power, privilege, and accountability in the public eye. The audience could feel the stakes rising as analysts debated, giving the story a multidimensional depth and keeping viewers engaged with every exchange. The expert panel's live reactions reinforced the significance of the clash and reminded everyone watching that this was more than a momentary confrontation. It was a debate that would resonate far beyond the studio. Within minutes of the interview airing, social media erupted. Twitter was flooded with clips of Anderson Cooper's pointed questions, and hashtags like #Cooper vs. Meghan, #CNN Clash, and #Accountability Matter began trending. TikTok creators uploaded short, looped reactions of Meghan's stunned expressions, adding text overlays that dissected each moment, while Reddit threads filled with heated debates over who had the upper hand. YouTube channels began posting breakdowns, analyzing the exchange frame by frame, and viewers quickly picked sides. Supporters of Anderson praised his calm but relentless questioning, calling it a masterclass in journalism. They highlighted how he held a public figure accountable without shouting or losing composure, and many commented on his ability to expose inconsistencies in real time. On the other hand, Meghan's supporters argued that she had been unfairly cornered, saying the questions were aggressive and ignored the personal and emotional pressures she had faced. Memes started circulating, showing both her reactions and Cooper's expressions, exaggerating moments for humor or dramatic effect, and this only fueled further engagement. The public divide was striking because it was not just about opinions on Meghan herself, but about broader discussions on media responsibility, privilege, and the role of celebrity in shaping narratives. Some viewers empathized with Meghan's challenges, while others were fascinated by Cooper's methodical dismantling of her talking points. The conversation spilled across platforms, creating trending discussions in different formats, from video breakdowns to comment threads to short-form memes. In less than an hour, the online community had cemented its split, one side calling it a lesson in journalistic rigor, the other framing it as a high-pressure ambush. The rapid social media response magnified the interview's impact, turning it from a televised segment into a viral cultural moment that kept audiences talking long after the cameras went dark. After the intense interview concluded, Meghan Markle's team quickly issued a statement addressing the segment. They emphasized that Meghan's goal had always been to share her experiences honestly and that the discussion with Anderson Cooper had been challenging but important. The statement highlighted her commitment to raising awareness about mental health and the pressures faced by public figures, while also asking the public to recognize that private struggles often do not translate easily into sound bites or headlines. The wording was measured, aiming to regain some control over the narrative while maintaining her dignified public image. Meanwhile, CNN aired a clarification segment the following day, where the network reaffirmed its commitment to balanced journalism. Analysts reviewed portions of the interview, pointing out that Cooper's questioning had been rigorous but fact-based, and emphasized that no personal bias influenced the line of inquiry. CNN highlighted that accountability in public interviews is not intended to humiliate but to ensure that statements, especially those with broad social implications, are supported by evidence. Anderson Cooper himself offered an indirect response during a later segment. He refrained from directly commenting on Meghan's performance, but he reflected on the broader responsibility of journalists to ask difficult questions and uphold truth. His remarks reinforced the idea that his approach was professional and standard, not personal, and served to underline the integrity of the interview process. The public reaction following the aftermath was intense and divided. Some praised Meghan for handling a high-pressure situation and speaking candidly about sensitive topics. Others commended Cooper's precision and calm dismantling of inconsistencies, seeing it as a model for serious journalism. Social media continued to buzz with opinions, memes, and video clips, keeping the story alive for days. Overall, the aftermath reinforced the polarized perception of both individuals. It underscored the enduring debate over the balance between celebrity narratives, media scrutiny, and public accountability, leaving viewers to continue questioning where sympathy ends and responsibility begins. The impact of this clash goes far beyond a single morning segment. It marks a point where both Meghan Markle and Anderson Cooper face a shift in how audiences view their roles in the public space. For Meghan, the exchange forces a deeper conversation about the gap between personal narrative and public expectation. She has built her image on being open about her struggles and her journey, but the interview exposed how quickly people judge when her words are placed under firm questioning. It also showed how her critics are ready to seize on any moment where she appears unprepared or defensive, while her supporters argue that she faces impossible pressure every time she speaks. For Anderson, The moment solidifies his place as a journalist who does not bend under celebrity tension. The pushback he delivered was sharp, but it was also controlled, and it showed that he is willing to hold anyone accountable when they step into the arena of national media. This interaction sets a new bar for future interviews, because viewers now expect the same level of precision and courage from him with every guest, even when the subject carries emotional weight. The clash also highlights how public narratives around Meghan have become symbols for larger cultural debates. People project their own beliefs about fame, privacy, and accountability onto her. Some see her as a figure who challenges old systems. Others see her as someone who relies too much on emotional appeal without enough concrete evidence. This moment forces everyone to confront how much of that perception is based on fact and how much is shaped by long-standing bias. At the same time, the interview reveals a lot about modern broadcast journalism. Conversations move fast, audiences react instantly online, and content spreads long before anyone can clarify intentions. The exchange shows how a single line or pause can overpower the rest of a nuanced conversation. It proves that high-profile interviews are no longer private exchanges between guest and journalist. They are public battlegrounds where every sentence lives forever, every reaction is dissected, and every misstep becomes part of a permanent digital record. In the end, this moment between Anderson Cooper and Meghan Markle became more than a heated interview. It became a study in power, perception, and control. Anderson walked in ready to challenge every statement, and he did so with steady confidence. Meghan stepped in prepared to defend her experience, but the pressure mounted the moment factual pushback entered the room. That dynamic turned the interview into a viral flashpoint that continues to spark debate. Millions replayed the highlight where Anderson delivered the line that changed the entire tone of the conversation. Viewers watched Meghan pause, watched the panel react, and watched the story take on a life of its own across every platform. It is the kind of moment that shapes reputations for years. It also shows how unpredictable live television can be when emotion and accountability collide. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want to stay ahead of every major media moment, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us dive deeper into the interviews, clashes, and stories that shape public conversation. Every week, we cover the biggest confrontations, the sharpest questions, and the most surprising turning points from across the media world. So stay with us because this story is not over and neither are the consequences. Meghan has more decisions to make. Anderson has more interviews ahead. And the public will keep watching every move from both sides. There is a lot more to uncover and we will be right here to break it all down for you.